Hello, everyone. In this video, I want to have just an informal discussion on how you can practice the stuff that you're learning in this class. And the things that I'm going to discuss here, take it further. Not just apply it to my class, but take it also to the other courses. At the end of the day, most of your courses are about learning technology or learning a particular programming language, a particular thing on how to do something. So what you should be doing is you should be taking the learning outcomes of each and every one of those lectures and applying it to your life. To how I learned this thing. Well, how can I use that to make me more productive or to just play around with it? Try to have fun with technology too. So these instructions here are vague on purpose. I'm just giving you ideas on things you can research and things that you can do. So far, we've covered 4 labs, so I'm gonna go covering 1 to 3 mostly. So how do you practice lab number 1? Well, the goal of lab number 1 was to learn Markdown, VS Code, Markdown, Git, GitHub, all of that, right? So if you want to practice that, the easiest way is to write more Markdown documents. Here are some ideas of things that you can do. You can add a README file to your repository. You can create a personal website using Markdown and then convert into HTML, and then using a feature called GitHub Pages. You can also write your notes for all of your other courses using Markdown as well. Um, you already have VS Code. You can create a repository for your notes, and then you can just write your notes like that. Conversionally, you can also simply use a note-taking application that supports Markdown. Here are some examples over here of open source applications that support Markdown. I like to use Obsidian, but the others one are very good too. This just happened to be the one that I use. Let me see more platforms. What do we have here? So for Linux, I'm gonna download the dep package because I'm on Debian. Okay, and I'm just gonna click on it. See, as you can see, I told you it's available everywhere. I'm gonna try to use the terminal as little as possible, since we haven't covered much of the terminal yet, and that way the video remains approachable to even people that are newer to Linux as well, not just to my class. While this application is installing, I'm just gonna continue discussing through the topics I have written down over here. Moving on, how do you practice lab number 2? Well, lab number 2 is virtualization, right? How to install virtual machines, how to remove virtual machines. So there are several technologies that take place here. One is VirtualBox. So if you want to master VirtualBox, just make more virtual machines, right? It might be a little tricky to find an actual usage for VirtualBox in your real life if you're not the kind of person who's accustomed to tinkering with their computer, but I'm pretty sure you can find ways in which you can play around with different operating systems. One thing that a lot of people do, especially those that are new to Linux, is that they try out different Linux distributions, right? So I suggest you do that. Download ISO files of easy to use Linux distributions or similar to Windows Linux distributions and create new virtual machines. See if you like it. And by all means, if you want to use that for my class, you can. That wouldn't be a problem at all. I believe that I included here, yeah, some of them. Soaring, Linux Mint, Linux Lite, those are very good options. You can also download ready-made virtual machines from OX boxes to practice importing and exporting virtual machines. You can also play around with Kali, right? Uh, I know some of you are into cybersecurity. You can download a Kali virtual machine or create a Kali virtual machine and play around with passing hardware from your local computer to that virtual machine. Again, these are just ideas on ways you can implement virtualization that go outside of my class, but allow you to enhance what you learn in class. I'm gonna do an example of that in a little bit. So for now, let's continue moving on. Now that I have, by the way, this is a test virtual machine, which is something that I encourage you to do. Have a virtual machine for your core stuff, right? And if you want to practice and you want to make sure that you don't break nothing, you can just have another virtual machine for breaking things, right? And that way you can switch around between, hey, this environment is for me to really destroy, and this other environment is for me to do homework. That is always an option. Like, why not? And you can create a different repository too as well to, again, play around with these technologies. So I believe the program has already finished installing. Yep, there you go. And I'm going to demonstrate that note-taking application in a moment. For the time being, I'm going to go back to the lab one practicing that I was mentioning earlier. So since the point of lab one is Markdown, and one way that I mentioned you can do, you can implement Markdown in your life is by transitioning from taking notes in Word or Power or what should I call it, um, Docs, right? A lot of people use Google Docs because it's online. Other people like using Microsoft Word because for whatever reason they like terrible programs. So if you want to, you can transition to using Markdown instead. Something smaller and quicker. So the first thing that you should do in this case is you make a repository on GitHub, right? Mostly so that you can track your files to, in your computer and on GitHub as well. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna go to GitHub over here and I'm gonna make a repository and I'm just gonna call it my notes. My notes. Create repository, done, and now I can just copy this and I can obviously clone it in my computer. Now, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna open the file manager, right? Because this is a testing environment, and I'm gonna make a folder called projects. And I'm gonna put a bunch of repositories over here because I wanna practice this Git and GitHub workflow. So I'm gonna create a new folder here and I'm gonna name it the same as my repository, which will be my notes, right? Good. Oops. Go back to the file manager. I'm gonna go inside my notes, open the terminal, and I can just copy these lines over here and paste it on my terminal. Press enter. And if you refresh, you're gonna notice this here is gonna create a file called readme.md. If you refresh, boom, right? So now I know that I have my repository in my computer configured and I also have it on GitHub. So I'm gonna open VS Code and I am going to open file, open folder, and I'm going to open my notes project. So I'm going to go to projects, my notes, and then select. I need to make sure that I am working with the correct project, right? My notes, as you can see over here. Yes, trust the authors. Perfect. Right? And I have a README file over here that I can modify. And if you took a look at the notes that I left for you over here, a README file is just a file that tells you, information about your repository. So I can put over here and say my notes. This repo is to store my notes from the classes I am taking. Right? Save. And now what I did is ahead of time I created, well, I didn't create it, I actually just prompted ChatGPT to make it because I needed some content to demonstrate this. So I went on the college website, grabbed a couple of the name of the courses that we offer, and then generated some boilerplate notes so that I can put them over here just so that I can demo to you what I am talking about. Let me just close this because we don't need it. And I saved those files here in a folder called notes. So I'm just gonna copy these markdown files here. Again, this is just boilerplate text generated by ChatGPT. I didn't proofread it, didn't read it at all. I just needed boilerplate text to demonstrate this. So I'm gonna go back to projects, my notes. I'm just gonna put it right over here. Right? Right. Now, because most of these courses are also going to have screenshots and example files, and I'm probably going to have homeworks that I need to save and things like that, it would be a good idea for me to organize this better. So I'm going to create a folder for each and every one of these courses so that each and every one of those files are isolated to their own environment, right? To their own little folder. I like to have things neatly organized. So it's going to go CIS 106. Let's just make another folder. I should do Control N here. Nope, that was Control N. Up, Control Shift N. And the next one is CIS 165. Control Shift N. CIS 180. Again, CIS 290, boom. And now I'm just gonna put the files in their right place. Wow, doing this graphically is a pain. Okay, perfect. So now I have several folders over here. Good, great. I'm gonna put a couple of links here to each and every one of the courses. So just copy this so that I avoid typing too much. This is gonna be 106, CIS 106, CIS 106.md. This one is gonna be 165, CIS 165. Then we have 180. And finally, we have 290. Okay. Now that we finished with this, let's pretend that I am done working for today. I already took my notes. I am going to go play some whatever game you're playing right now because nobody plays Call of Duty anymore, at least nobody with self-respect. So let's go and do new terminal, git pull, git add period, git commit -m finished for today, added 106 to 290, and then git push. Done. If we go back to GitHub, come over here, and you see you have now a repository over here with your notes, and you can just go to VS Code and type your notes over here. Now, some people might not like VS Code, and you might be wondering, Professor, this is a nice workflow, this is pretty cool and all, but I would prefer to use an application that it's not that much of a code editor for writing my notes. And that's when Obsidian comes into play. So I'm going to close VS Code for a moment, and I'm going to open Obsidian. And this is just a text editor. This is pretty easy to use, very, very straightforward. So the first thing is going to ask you, hey, do you want to create a new vault? And then I say, no, I don't want to do that. I want to open one. And a vault is just a folder. And it's going to be this over here, my notes. Click on select. And now notice that I have a text editor like I had before, similar to VS Code, but when I click on my notes over here, I can edit them and type as if I were doing like a Microsoft Word document, right? And let's add something over here. For example, I'm just gonna add content. Let's say that there was a new lecture over here and it was on, say, 14, new lecture, managing users, right? And let's just put some boilerplate text over here. I'm just gonna generate some boilerplate text. Okay, and let's say that I finish writing my Python notes, right? This saves automatically. All I have to do now is close it, and if I want to send this to GitHub, normally I go navigate to my folder where I have my projects, my notes, open in terminal, and then I do the git commands as well. That's it. And this is a nice way of practicing these new commands and these new stuff that you just learn, right? And it just makes you more efficient because you don't have to be remembering things because you incorporated this new technology into your day-to-day workflow. Again, that's just two examples on how you can use Markdown for note-taking in VS Code, or you can just use a separate application completely and couple that with your Git and GitHub workflow that you did. So let me come back over here, refresh, and if you go to 106, see you have a 106 file, and if you scroll all the way down, you have, oops, sorry, you have that little bit that we added in Obsidian as well. Okay, so that demonstrates that part over there. Again, let's take a look at this over here. Like, how do I create a personal website using Markdown? So again, here's the thing. Now let's grab one of these Markdown files here, right? Let's grab one of these Markdown files. Gonna go and create a new repository again, same process. I'm gonna create a new repository. And the repository name is going to be sample site. Why not? Sample site. I'm just gonna copy this because I'm gonna need it. Okay, sample site. I'm gonna again open my file manager, and inside projects, I'm gonna create a new folder called sample site. I'm gonna go inside sample site, open my terminal, and just copy these lines over here, paste, and enter. So now that I have my repository synchronized with GitHub and my local Git repository, it's time for me to open VS Code. Again, File, Open Folder, and I'm gonna go to Sample Site and click on Select. Don't save because I don't need that anymore. Yes, throws the authors. I can close this. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a new file called index.md. So index.markdown. And I'm gonna put the content that I want on my website over here. And here is what I'm going to do. So I'm gonna grab one of the other files that I created, with placeholder markdown text. Let me grab the Linux one. Why not? Just gonna copy this and I'm gonna paste it over here. Control-S. Now let's convert this to HTML. And we have our HTML file. And if we preview this with Live Server, it gives us an HTML document. Very ugly because, again, there is no styling here. There is no CSS, but that's totally fine. We're going to do something with that in a little bit. So now that I have my website, I'm going to go terminal, new terminal, and I'm going to send this to GitHub. Git pull git add period git commit -m added index that html hyphen no css yet, then git push, done. Perfect. Now let's refresh our page. And we have an index.html file and an index.md file. Now, how do we turn this into an actual website? Like, how do we host this on the web so that other people can go to my ugly sample site website? Well, quite simple. So let's go to settings and let's go to pages. I want to deploy from branch, totally fine. Select your branch, which is gonna be main, and then click on save. We need to wait a little bit. this is gonna be the domain that we're gonna use. Just copy this. You can also buy a domain and configure it over here. There are tons of guides online on how to do that. And if you're interested, I can make a video on that as well because I need to set one up in the next month or so. So if you're interested on that, we can obviously make a video on that, but there are tons of videos about it. So I don't really think that you are going to need me to do that. Now, this is going to return you a 404, and that's expected because there is nothing hosted over here. But if you go / and then provide sample site, the name of our repository, it will load the index.html file that is located in your repository here. Let's go back to sample site. That is located over here. And you can give this URL to anyone and they'll be able to access this file, which means that technically speaking, you can also turn your nodes into a website directly, provided that you play around a little bit with linking the files here and there. Now let's give some styles to this HTML. And um, I don't teach web development. We don't do web development in the course. And this is a very good, very good opportunity for us to ask ChatGPT to generate some CSS for us. So I like to use the Bulma CSS framework because it's lightweight and it looks clean and easy to use. So what I'm gonna do, let me go to chat.com real quick. And let's tell ChatGPT the following. Given this HTML, provide me with a CSS style file that incorporates the Bulma CSS framework into the HTML. This needs to be a separate file, so use the link tag. Now what I'm gonna do is go to VS Code. By the way, you can connect the Copilot chatbot too if you want. It's totally fine. I don't use it, so I'm not gonna connect it. Why did I open 2 tabs? That wasn't very smart. I closed it. I closed it. That wasn't very smart at all. Okay, add CSS styles to this HTML. Add the styles to a separate style sheet. Use the Bulma CSS framework. Let's wait until it finishes. This is our CSS style sheet, so we are gonna copy this and create a new file. And it's done. Copy styles.css, paste, save. And we need to replace our index.html because it definitely added some containers and styles, some classes, sorry. I'm a little tired, to our HTML. And it seems like it didn't generate the complete HTML. So let me see. Probably did. Let's copy. Oops, copy the wrong thing. It did not. So let's ask it to regenerate the HTML. Regenerate the HTML with the new appropriate Bulma classes. Almost done. Continue generating. Let's replace the old HTML with the new HTML and do a little preview. Now it's looking much better, isn't it? We made changes to our site, so now let's go ahead and push this to GitHub so that our website can get refreshed. Git add period, git commit sm, added Bulma CSS and other styles to styles.css. Git push. This won't take effect right away, so you gotta give it like what, 5 minutes more or less, and we come back for it in a moment. In our page over here, we should see, yep, we should see a deployment status over here, letting us know that the page is getting generated. And if you click on it, it's gonna show you that it's applying the styles, and if there is any issue here, it's gonna let you know, hey, something went wrong, and you can debug it by following the trail over here. And there you go. That is a way in which we can take Git, GitHub, Markdown, VS Code, all of the things that you learn in lab number one further. So how do we practice lab number two? Because we spoke a lot about lab number one, and what we mostly did was just use what we already know. So for lab number two, again, make VMs, make virtual machines, play around with new operating systems that you never knew even existed. So one of the very first things you should do is create a machine like this one, where you can just play around with things, and you can even create a new GitHub account too if you don't even want to connect them to GitHub accounts. How do you practice the Git and GitHub workflow? Well, by doing the things that we just did right now. Make repositories, clone the repositories, put content into it, push it, pull it. Like, just by literally following this workflow, you'll master it you know, on you'll master it without even realizing it, that you already know how this works, right? We demonstrated the GitHub Pages part, but one thing that you can do is you can learn Jekyll, which allows you to write Markdown and create pages like the one that you use for my class over here. Let's go and look at Jekyll themes, for example. Actually, let's see if this updated already, which it should have, and there we go. See? Just gonna close this for now, and let's go to Jekyll, for example. Jekyll is pretty easy to use. I definitely recommend you to learn it if you are a web development student. If you're not, then it's not really that big of that. That's something that you're gonna really. If you're like a networking administration student, I don't think you're gonna get a lot of use out of this stuff. So I will focus on other things. But like for web development students, this is really, really useful. So I recommend you learn about this. This is not the only type of static site generators. There are others. Jekyll just happened to be what I use. Just gonna close these two over here and move on. So I was mentioning about these guys earlier, right? These are operating systems who Their goal is to be a Windows replacement, essentially, is to give an environment that is similar enough to Windows but with Linux, so that new users can come to the Linux side and stay there. Lately, because of the disappointment that Windows 11 has been and all of the tracking, Linux Mint has been very, very, very popular. And there is a Debian version of Linux Mint too, which is Linux Mint using Debian as a base rather than using Ubuntu. Whichever of them will work fine for you. So I already went ahead and the downloaded the ISO file for those three operating systems. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna create a new virtual machine. As a matter of fact, let me go to the VM and turn that off because not gonna need it anymore. And let's go and create new. I'm gonna call this one Linux Mint. Linux Mint 22. Four gigs of RAM. I'm mostly following the same specifications that we use. And you know what? I'm gonna give it 40 for now and finish that we use for Debian. So you can follow the same guide that you followed before. And I'm pretty sure that is gonna be very, very similar. That I don't foresee major differences or problem aside from the interface. The installation should be also very straightforward as well. However, if there are issues, that's a learning opportunity. You can look for information online. So let's turn it on and take a look at this. Start Linux Mint. I'm gonna go full screen on this. Almost done. And we are presented with Linux Mint Live Environment. You can double click here to start the installer, or you can play around with it and see if you like what you see. And you can rinse and repeat the process with other Linux distributions too. Doesn't need to be any of this. There are extensive guides online everywhere. Some distributions even include guides on how to, install their OS in a virtual machine and so on. I'm gonna turn this one off and I will load um, Linux Soaring OS and then the other one as well. I'm gonna show you something interesting. Presenter over here. Now I'm gonna click on settings, and what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna switch the ISO file so that I don't have to create a new virtual machine because I ended up not installing the operating system. So I'm gonna go to storage. See here that it says empty because there is nothing in there. So I'm gonna click on the disk and choose disk file, and let's go with Zorin. Try Zorin. Because let's remember that virtual machines are just, virtual counterparts of regular computers. So what I did over here is just swap the installer disk of one for another. While that loads, I'm just gonna go get some water. Okay, and soaring is almost up. I'm gonna try Soaring OS. I don't want to go through the installer. While that loads, I forgot to mention, if you happen to be using an ARM computer, like a like a MacBook with an M series CPU, you might not be able to do this activity like I'm doing it because there is a limitation that you have, and that is the fact that you have an ARM CPU instead of x86. So a lot of operating systems are not available for ARM, which is a bit problematic. So one thing that you can do is that you can install a version of Debian without a desktop environment and then install a desktop environment on top of that one. I include that in the list of activities as well that you can do to practice stuff. This one seems to not wanting to load. I don't like that. I didn't want to do the installation of this. Well, let's see if we can create a new VM for testing the other distribution. It was Linux Lite, which I like because it's very, very light for older computers. Perfect. 4096 settings. It's mostly display that matters, so bring that up all the way. And let's go and disable audio because we don't need it. And I'm about to turn this one on. I'm gonna restart this one and see if I can choose a compatibility mode. Oh, save graphics. There we go. And capture, save graphics. and try Soaring OS because I don't want to do the installation. Wow, Linux Lite still loading. And yay, came back online. Okay, this is how Soaring would look like. I'm just gonna close this over here. Again, we have a menu similar to how to Windows menu. Have a little app store over here. And if you like this, you can definitely use it for the class because pretty much everything we're going to do in the class is fully compatible with any of these operating systems. Again, here, this um, same thing. Honestly, I really, except that this is lighter. This is much, much lighter. So if you want even something lighter than Debian, for example, at least the version we're using, how we have it configured, this Linux Lite will definitely do the trick for you. It comes pre-installed with Google Chrome because a lot of people love Chrome, which I always find that odd, but you can always change it. Comes with Powerline. Okay, time to turn this one off, shut down, and the same thing goes with this one, power off. And that's, yeah, power off. And that's about it. Again, if you every lecture that I give you in my class is gonna have some sort of technology that you're learning at the time. Just try to incorporate that the best you can and play around with it, research it, and if you want exercises, just ask for them, and there are extra credit for that. This doesn't count because, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, this is more of an informal conversation on things that you can do with the stuff that you have already learned throughout the semester up until this point in the semester. If you have any questions, you can always Slack me.